good to see you all. And I wanted to start this morning's sermon with a guided meditation. And so I invite you, wherever you are, to try to settle into your seat, to try to get as comfortable as you can. And if you feel comfortable, to close your eyes. If you feel like the only way you're willing to do that is shut off the video, that's okay too. But I invite you to enter an internal space with me. And as we begin, try to picture a flame in the center of your heart. It can be a small flame, it's the flame of a match at first. See that flame in your heart. Watch as the light dances from that flame. See if you can feel the warmth of that flame right in the center of your heart. And once you can see it, once you can feel it, I invite you to expand that circle of light and warmth to hold your whole body. Feel that warmth from the top of your head, down through your face, down your arms into your fingertips, down through your legs and toes. See how the light of that flame can make your skin more luminous. Feel it like gentle sun, holding your whole body. And when you're ready, try expanding that sphere of light and warmth to hold your loved ones, those you're closest to, people in your family who might be with you or might be far away. It might include some pets or other beings. See their faces lit up by this light, this gentle light. Imagine them warmed by its warmth. Hold them for a moment in your love and in your mind's eye. These people you love, held by the light of your heart. And when you're ready, I invite you to expand it again. Expand that sphere of light and warmth out to the edges of your community, the edges of your city, the edges of your town, holding people who are not just loved ones, but maybe people you struggle with, maybe some people who frustrate you, maybe some people who have hurt you. See if you can hold and surround them in light and warmth as well. If you're having trouble with specific faces that are coming to mind, just let them go into the background and bring your mind's eye to maybe anonymous people in your community who you don't know, but who you know have inherent worth and dignity. People that you know are connected to you even if you don't know their names. Through the streets of your city, through a shared grocery store or coffee shop. And once you can see your community held in that light, feeling that warmth from your heart, I invite you to expand that sphere again, this time to encompass the whole country. If you're in the United States, choose the United States, or if you're elsewhere, you can choose another country. For those of us here, this is a horizon of light that moves from coast to coast, from border to border, from Guam to Puerto Rico. See if you can hold all of our big, complicated, hurting, hurtful, healing, hopeful country in light and in warmth. See if you can hold the whole country. And finally, when you're ready, try to see if you can expand those boundaries one more time to encompass the whole world. Watch that horizon of light streaming across the Pacific and the Atlantic, crossing Asia and Australia and Europe and Africa, all the way down to Antarctica, through the Middle East. See if you can hold the whole world, people who live on all kinds of land, people who love in all kinds of ways, who speak all kinds of languages. See if you can hold them in that light. See if you can visualize them feeling that gentle warmth. And once you are holding that whole world with that light from your heart, I invite you to put your hands on your heart. Feel that warmth within you one more time. Maybe offer a silent blessing to those who've been held by you in this moment. Loved ones and country people and people we've never met who don't share a language with us across the world. Offer them a blessing. Offer a moment of gratitude for this human community. A moment of gratitude for the love in your own heart. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and return back to worship together. How was that for people? How many of you got stuck somewhere? How many of you could feel that warmth and that light? This is a practice that I learned from a spiritual director many years ago, and it's one that I need to return to. I'm surprised that I'm tearing up. It's one that I need to return to all the time. All the time. Maybe especially in this time of pandemic, maybe especially in this time of political division. Sometimes it's just really important to connect my heart to those I love, those I share a community with, my country, my world. Because I know that each person in this world has inherent worth and dignity. And each person in this world is connected to me and to you through the interdependent web of life of which we are all a part. And you know that too. And this spiritual practice brings me back to really being able to feel that truth. even though my brain knows that truth all the time. I don't know about you, but when someone is honking at me in traffic, I forget all of that interdependence. When someone is, when I'm watching a presidential debate, boy, is it hard to remember inherent worth and dignity sometimes. When my back hurts, it's hard to remember even people in my circle of loved ones. And I know that when I am in my least good self, when I like myself the least, when I'm insecure or when I'm feeling anxious, that it is really, really hard for my heart to even feel like a flame is possible in there. It's hard to even begin the meditation when I don't like myself. And so it's important for me to come back to these kinds of spiritual practices when I can reduce distractions around me, to remember what I know to be true, which is that all have worth and all are connected. Process theologians tell us that the world isn't divided into good or bad. The world is constantly in motion, constantly changing, and that the way to define what is good is the motion of widening, the motion of opening up more possibilities, more opportunities for the flourishing of life. And that the way to define evil or bad is those places that where where we narrow those possibilities, where we narrow the possibility for the flourishing of life, the opportunity for people to make choices that bring more love into the world. And so today's service is called Wider Still because of that song that the choir sang for us. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. And for me, what's most important about that song is not just drawing the circle wide, but that wider still part, that constant opening more and more, that motion of widening the possibilities for the flourishing of life and the sense of connection to others. The center of my faith tells me that this is what is maybe most important for me to remember as a human, that all have worth and dignity, that we are all connected. And yet we mess it up all the time, right? As humans, not just in those traffic moments where we have no interest in feeling interdependent with the person who cut us off, but in our church community, in our relationships, even with the people that we love the most. Unitarian minister William Ellery Channing, who was one of the first people who called himself a Unitarian minister. He was a little bit older than our own William Henry Furness, even though our congregation started calling ourselves Unitarian before any other congregation in the United States. William Ellery Channing was the one who sort of brought the Puritans into calling themselves Unitarian in the early 1800s. And Channing at one point wrote this. He said, "I am a living member of the great family of all souls, and I cannot improve or suffer myself without diffusing good and evil around me through an ever-largening sphere. I belong to this family," he wrote. "I am bound to it by vital bonds. I am a living member of the great family of all souls, not some souls, not the chosen souls and the unchosen souls, all souls. I am bound to it by vital bonds, and everything I do to make myself better, to make good choices in the world, to bring more love into the world, ripples out from me in ever-largening spheres. And everything I do to reduce goodness in the world, everything I do that causes suffering, also ripples out into this wider human community." This is a core part of our theology today, and it has been a core part of our theology from the very beginning of us calling ourselves Unitarian. Even though back then we were staunchly Christian, it wouldn't even occur to people to not call themselves Christian, which is obviously not true of us now. But this core of interconnection has always been very central to who we are, despite all of the other changes in our theology over the past couple hundred years. We believe this deep in our guts, and it's the main reason why many of us come to this congregation. A lot of us grew up in some other tradition where what was important was that one circle was drawn around the good and one circle was drawn around the bad, and maybe we were put in the bad circle because of who we were or how many questions we asked. And it felt refreshing to find a faith tradition where that circle gets drawn wider and wider still, over and over again, around the whole human family. And yet we fail, right? And yet, much as we try to be fully welcoming, there are ways that we have fallen short and continue to fall short. I'm so aware of how no one has to walk up the steps to go to worship right now. And no one has to traverse a poorly constructed, overly steep, dangerous ramp to get into worship right now. And we have closed captionings right now for people who need some extra support to be able to capture all of the words in services. If you haven't noticed that feature yet and you need it, there should be a button on the bottom of your screen that says closed captioning that you can click on to be able to see that. None of it's perfect, but there are ways that actually right now we are more open than we have ever been. There are also a ton of ways that we continue to fail at drawing that circle wide as a congregation. I think a lot about how we put some experiences and expectations at the center of our congregation and others at the margins, so that instead of saying we are a multicultural community, we say we are mostly white, or we're a congregation trying to strive to be a more multicultural community. Or sometimes people in this community say we're an all-white church and ignore the diversity that is here. The work of bringing all of the voices in this congregation and all of the voices that we want to welcome into this congregation, into the center, is hard work, and it's lifelong work, and it requires change from within, not just expanding the boundaries of where those margins are. And we mess it up all the time. But what inspires me about this congregation is that we come back and we try again, and sometimes we do better the next time. I actually think that we usually do a little bit better each time that we mess up. And so we have this faith that is all about welcoming people and being connected to people across the human family, and yet we fail regularly. And we have a faith that is about welcoming people and being connected across the human family, but we also sometimes forget to go deep enough with our theology that we remember that we're talking about all people and not all behaviors, right? That causing harm is not something that's welcome in this community. And sometimes congregations like ours allow people to cause harm and stay causing harm in these communities because we fear that we will be denying our theology if we hold people accountable for their behavior. And so the two ways that feel really important for me to continue to try harder and harder is around these questions of sort of who are we welcoming? What voices do we put at the center of who we are? And how can we hold our theology deeply enough that we can say, yes, all people are welcome here, but not all behaviors, and find ways back into right relationship with each other when we fail each other and when we hurt each other. I'm not going to go into all of that. This isn't a sermon where I can give a 10-point plan for us getting to where we want to go. I wish that was a simple process, but it is not. What's true is that is deep spiritual work for every single one of us, and that when we do that work, it not only transforms small religious community like ours, but it transforms everything in our lives, all of the people we interact with, because everything we do for good echoes out in ripples in an ever enlarging sphere and transforms the world. And so I invite you, if you haven't participated in some of that anti-oppression work here in this congregation, I invite you to find a way. Right now, there's a couple of classes that are going on. I think it's a regular topic of conversation with small group ministries. The board discusses it every month. Our accessibility task force is working on it. This is hard work that we are going to be doing for a long time. And I also wanted to lift up one thing that I'm going to invite Melody to put in the chat, which is that the UUA, our parent denomination, just put out this report after a multi-year process of stories and activities and recommendations for congregations who are trying to widen that circle of concern and participate, become more anti-oppressive as a congregation. This is a report that I'm just beginning to look at. It just came out in June, and I hope that our board will be able to take a look at this year as well. But if you're curious to delve more into what some really thoughtful recommendations are about how we can be transforming ourselves, I invite you to take a look at that report. The work of making the promise of our faith real is spiritual work, and it's institutional work, and it's relational work. But that's why I wanted to start off with a guided meditation today, because I feel like doing these spiritual practices and having tools to help us reground ourselves are so key in all of this work, in all of the work of our lives. But particularly at this moment. I think the pandemic is one of those times that is making it very easy to narrow our circle. Rather than drawing our circle wide, it's much easier right now to put our arms around the couple of people that are closest to us and try to just hunker down and get through it, rather than opening ourselves wider in this time of fear. And in a time when our political conversation is seemingly all about division, it's hard to put our values of worth and dignity of every person and democracy and justice and compassion and interdependence. It's hard to find a way to put those values at the center of our political action, rather than just feeling like we have to choose sides and rally our base. This is a hard time to draw the circle wide. And yet I hope that many of you will use this spiritual practice that we shared today and any other spiritual practices that you have in your life that help to ground you and help to connect you with not only that best self within you, that flame in your heart, that truth that you know of the worth and dignity of yourself and all people, and your interconnection with all of the human community. Use whatever spiritual practices work for you in the coming weeks and months, especially as we're looking forward to the election, potentially a very scary aftermath of the election and a lot of uncertainty. Let's do what we can to stay grounded so that we can be people who continue to draw the circle wide, draw it wider and wider still. This is the best of what we know to be true in this world. And it's something that we do better together than we do alone. I hope many of you will find ways of deepening your spirit in this time, find ways of connecting with others and deepening your spirit here. May it be so. May the circle be wider and wider drawn. Amen.
Hi, I'm Reverend Hannah Capaldi.
And I'm Reverend Abbey Tennis. We are the ministers at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where our mission is to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world.
We're so grateful that you watched, and we hope that the sermon connected with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for a live worship service every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always find the link to that service on our website at www.philauu.org. In these services, you'll hear words like you've just heard, And you also get a chance to greet one another, pray together, sing together. And we even hold a virtual coffee hour after services to get a chance to greet some new and old friends.
If you want to support the mission of this community and you feel moved to give, you can do so by going to the website that Reverend Abbey just mentioned. You can find that link below, or you can text 215-709-5095 and follow the prompts to give.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, we encourage you to share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.